welcome back to my channel. I'm gonna do the review of Deuteronomy. I found that the first few chapters were more or less like a recount of all that had happened in the previous chapter. It recounted, like the history basically of the children of Israel. Only Caleb made it in from all of the people. Yeah, so there's like a lot more staunch rules, especially around the worship of like other gods, and like continual emphasis on that, the fact that God is a jealous God. The official 10 Commandments in chapter 5, I found it quite beautiful. All the promises in which the God was saying, like, this is what I can give to you, this is what you can enjoy when you do obey. There was like an interesting verse. It was in chapter 20, verses 19 and 20. Basically, God was saying that the trees should not be cut down, and I actually copied the entire verse because I found it really interesting. So I was like, when you besiege a city for a long time while making war against it to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you can eat of them, do not cut them down to use in the siege. For the tree of the field is the man's food. And then it goes, only the trees which you know are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down to build siege works against the city that makes war with you until it is subdued. I found that so interesting, and I recalled, I'm not sure exactly where in the New Testament, still getting there, where Jesus curses a fig tree. Like, he was hungry, recognized that this tree in front of him was a fig tree, so he goes to it, and it's like it doesn't have any fruits or something's wrong with it, and he cursed it and it dried up and it shriveled up by the next day. And I went to that thought, and I went to another thought, like when we first came to New Zealand, like something that was really interesting to us in the houses and stuff, in the compounds, is that people grew trees, like people planted trees that weren't fruit-bearing trees. So I remember thinking that was so interesting to have this big, glorious, beautiful looking trees that were just for oxygen. If a soldier, after warring against the city, and a soldier like spots a lady that he really likes, he can take her, he has to give her, I think the rule was that he has to give her 1 month to mourn the situation of, having lost her home, perhaps her husband, whatever. And before he can, like, it says the words used, and I quote, before he can go into her, so I guess that means, sleep with her. At that time, it was very much about conquering cities and like expanding your own territory. Like, that's really the speak of the Old Testament. It went on to say that, and if you later find out that you don't really like her, you can't sell her as a slave. Like, you can't go and sell her as a slave. The man then needs to let her go to wherever she chooses to go. And all these interesting rules. So when a mother and father feel like their child is just so rebellious and there's nothing they can do about the child, they're to take it to the elders and say, oh, this child is rebellious. It's funny because as I was reading that part, I was waiting for expected maybe a council or some elders will mentor the boy, or he would live with some other people for some time so he's like taught the word, or maybe he would live with the Levites to bring his spirit close to God. It couldn't be more far from my thinking. When a son has been too rebellious, he's to be brought in front of the elders and stoned to death by the elders. I just have to keep reminding myself, God says in this, around this time, he literally wants to walking around with them. So it's like, this is the standard of good purity. It's just a very high standard. The stoning was real. Like, back then it was just a lot of stoning. If a man is not happy with his wife, and he goes, oh well, no, she's not a virgin, and he reports her to the elders, if the parents, because I know in some African cultures, I read this in like a book, I don't remember which book, like in some African cultures, maybe back then, I don't know if it's still practiced, when a woman, like a girl, is married off, like they this is weird, they sleep on like white sheets. So the first night they're together, they sleep on white sheets, and you know, after they make love, the sheet is taken, the parents take the sheet, like, to say, you know, my child was pure, you know, before her wedding day or whatever. And also for situations like this, you know, where the husband is like, oh, well, no, she wasn't a virgin, and that's like a serious accusation. If the parents can bring the cloth and prove, like, no, she definitely was, then, you know, it's like the man is shunned as like as an evil man, and he's not a good man. So it's like evidence of virginity. If in fact it's true, and there are other people that can testify and say, oh, I know she's not a virgin, they take her to front of her father's house and stone her to death. I just feel like, wow, oh my days. Emphasize so much on purging the evil. Like, we must purge the evil out of the community. Purge not just evil as in evil deeds, like illnesses. When somebody like has a boil, you know, this was actually in Leviticus that they spoke about this, you know. They need to literally stay outside of camp, like just purging all sorts of anything that is not like perfect. So entering the assembly of God, right? So it's like, so I guess this must be like the synagogue then, and it literally states in one of the verses that a man with, you know, with no, that's been castrated, a man with no male parts can't enter the assembly of God. So I was like, wow, like, okay, I don't know what that means, like, what? Oh wow. And so a man who is illegitimate also can't enter the assembly of God till his 10th generation. You know, oftentimes when we think of Egyptians, we think like, oh, evil. They were so mean to the Israelites, which they were. They absolutely were, and like God had to like rescue the Israelites. But then like it's that God remembers also the good. There was a season when they were the helpers, you know. There was a famine in Israel, and Egypt was the place, was where like people found refuge, found food, and they, until all memory of Joseph was forgotten by Egyptians, Israelites were treated really well. So I thought it was quite cool that there was an emphasis that, yeah, no, an Egyptian can enter the assembly of the Lord, because the Israelites were sojourners there for such a long time. And I was like, oh, so fair. I love fairness. Love it. Things that stuck out to me: when you loan to, if you're loaning or you have a lot of money and you loan to people, you're not to charge interest to like your brothers, like an Israelite, but you can charge interest to foreigners. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then there was like another one: newly married men cannot go to war. They need to stay home for a year and be happy with their wife. And then there was this part, which I know is very popular in many African cultures and practices, where it says, it talks about, you know, a brother, because brothers live together. In a lot of African cultures, you know, brothers live, like you get land close to where your dad had a land, like brothers live together. So it's like, close to where your brother has a land, like your dad allocates you land, right? And without fathering a child. So if the man passes on without giving birth to a child, so his brother is to take on the wife to allow him to impregnate her, so that his lineage, his name isn't like forgotten. So yeah. And if for any reason the man doesn't want to do that, the brother doesn't want to do that for his brother, then he gets his sandals taken off. I don't know, there must be a thing of shame. There was actually a part of Deuteronomy that I couldn't read. Like, it was so gruesome and so explicit. It was talking about, you know, cannibalism. Like, God was cursing, telling them all the curses that they would live under. Like, all of the illnesses in Egypt, he would bring it to them. They would suffer it, and like, they would be so poor and so hungry that they would eat their children. When it started talking like that, and it goes into so much detail about how they will eat their children, I was like, it's okay. This is too much for my body. Goes on to teach a song. I think it's verse 29 or 30. I think the song is in verse 30. Sorry, chapter 30. And it's like basically a song to tell them, like, if you do good, this is the good things that will happen to you. If you do bad, all these curses, all of the gruesome curses will happen. And it's like sung to the children, and like children, they all know the song. And it just makes me wonder, like, now I've read, further in to the Old Testament, and it's like, man, these people worship other gods so much. Do they like not remember the song, or does the song start to feel like a lullaby? Like in the books after Deuteronomy, they just switched up on God like so quickly. But anyways, Moses, after like journeying with the children of Israel, being so frustrated with them, pleading to God on their behalf, angering God because of them, like literally living a life for these people. Moses literally living his life for Israel. He couldn't see the promised land. It's just interesting to me, like, God already knows what will happen. God already knows the children of Israel will sin. Like, and with this song that he got Moses to teach them and everything, just trying to like guard against or protect against. And it's just when my reviews for the other chapters will be coming, and you'd be like, really? The children of Israel? But no judgment, because to be honest, we don't really have God like walking around our streets. I mean, like, we couldn't keep up a society, an environment to a standard by which God could actually like live comfortably, you know what I mean? So from this knowledge, I've actually stopped judging the children of Israel. Anyway, so that's my review of Deuteronomy. Like, so grateful that I live in the time that I live in, because I know that if I was to live in that time, I would have been one of the first to die. Like, I just know it. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I hope that has been useful for you. And the next book is Joshua. Why did that take me so long? The next book is Joshua, so I completed reading Joshua already. I just need to talk about my notes. See you in the next video. Bye.